This not yet mature episode forms part of a live recording. Our keynotes and public speaking events are recorded and also made publicly available through our podcasting channels. The audio quality and volume might be substandard due to the day's AV setup, and we apologize for this. Our live sessions are aimed to a physically present group and often delivered in the tone of the day and a wider topic. That being said, welcome. Thanks for being here. And welcome to Not Yet Mature.
Amazing. Thanks for having me here. How's it, guys? I think I'm gonna start up with a couple of terms and conditions out there. I think that's the practical part. So I'm not in the academics. I'm not a lecturer at all, but I've got a huge passion for this. I love speaking into the lives of younger people, especially on university point of view. But where I am very privileged, I guess, to say it like that, is I get to see you guys in the corporate world. I work in the corporate world, so I work with a lot of boardrooms and executives, and I am really privileged to be now at that phase where I have a lot of influence on where businesses are moving forward. Influence on who they need to hire, how does it work, how do we do metrics and analyze things, and what's the next steps. So what's really fun about that is you get to be part of shaping the future, first of all, but second of all, you get to see how you guys are doing in the workplace and what's working and what's not working. So when Miss Annette asked me to be a part of this, I obviously wanted to jump to the occasion. I love doing things like this. But the first terms and conditions is my thoughts that I'm going to share here today is not from an academia point of view. It's not from the university's point of view, and it doesn't necessarily reflect Miss Annette's point of view. So don't take this as a practical point, something that I see in the workplace. I stand by everything that I'm going to share here today, but I'm going to share, I stand by when I say this is my experience. This is my point of view. It's not a rule or a law or something that the university is saying, this is where things are going. This is my point of view. Okay, so if you've got any clash with anything, I actually encourage you to argue with me, to disagree with me. I think that's how we stir thoughts and we innovate. If at any point you've got a question, you don't need to raise your hand. I don't think but you can just speak up. If I don't hear you, then I would ask you to just capture my attention. But I really want you to tune into things. Very shortly, I don't think it's always necessary to give the sorry about the presentation. It's not your guys' IT. I forgot my. If you work with the MacBook, what's great, they went through a certain phase where they forgot all the plugins, right? Who here has got those MacBooks still? Unfortunately, I do. The latest ones I realized, okay, but we need a lot of plugins still. So I forgot mine. Apologies about that. So I usually when I start, I just put who I am on the background. I don't present myself. I'm like, if you're interested, you can read up on it or anything. So I'm just going to give you a very, very fast run through. My formal accreditations, I guess, you can put is from economics, major and micro and macroeconomics. And then from that, I scaled into business at my MBA. And I scaled some of my own businesses in practice, saw what's working, and then I funneled my business to speak into sales, speak into company culture, and speak into company culture, sales, and leadership development. That's kind of the three biggest things out there. And I guess that's that about me. Other than that, if you've got any questions, feel free to ask. Okay, you guys ready? Before I start, I want to say a couple of things. This is actually the start. What do we always say before we start? The first thing that I want to talk about is who here has ever heard about the law of innovation and diffusion? Never. Don't worry about it. It's a common law, but not everyone knows about it. So what this law refers to, it refers to, I'm going to paraphrase and kind of put it in my own words, right? I'm going to use an example as, let's take this scenario. I'm a keynote speaker in this scenario, for example. Let's say I've got a venue, and let's take this practical example. I'm at a venue, you guys are here. So the law of diffusion and innovation says this. It says that 2.5% of people will come because they see value, they relate to the value before it's presented. For example, they would either know me as the presenter and say, I know what Dion speaks about, it's super fascinating, it's interesting, I want to be there. Or they see the topic and they think it's relatable, I want to be there. Or they see the value of this class and everything that Ms. Annette presents as value added, they want to be there, they buy into that. Now, the law of innovation and diffusion says it's about 2.5% of that interest falls into that class. Then it says there's a huge chunk of people in this scenario that wants to be there because they may be curious, but they don't know if they naturally fall in love with it or gonna like what's being said, but they're still there because of their own free choice, right? Then you get two more sectors, the one that sees absolutely no value. The reason why they're there is they feel that they have to be there. It's part of the curriculum, it's part of the class, it's part of whatever, you have to be there. You have to go to class because the list says 50% attendance needs to be met before you can write exams, and you're just there, right? And then you get the bottom half, which we see a lot in public debates nowadays, is the bottom half are the people, or not the bottom 2.5%, are the people that they absolutely don't want to be there. They absolutely don't agree with what's being presented, but they're there to stir up and go and argue. Okay, we see that on public spaces, right? When we go on Instagram, when people do public debates, we saw with the whole Charlie Kirk thing, you've got a massive division that's there to just argue and debate completely against what's being said, not only in his space, but any public debates. And then we've got all the other sectors. So where am I going with this story? In my business, when we and my clients, when we market with people and for people, we realized the power of cohorting. If you listen to my podcast, I'll share some links. I speak about cohorting a lot. Cohorting is basically segmenting people about their demographics. So I'll segment, for example, male and female. Then I'll segment on older and younger. And if you think about it, if I want to present a product or anything like that, I'll communicate it differently to each cohort, right? We're all adults here. If I sell tampons, I'm going to use a story about condoms actually later. It's easier for me to relate and speak to females about it and sell to that. But if you think about it, dads one day would also, and even spouses for their wives, would need to go and buy those type of things. So it's not completely a dead market, but you'll definitely communicate the message differently to that cohort, right? Makes sense. So we use the law of diffusion and innovation specifically with cohort and marketing, because what I found is that if you advertise to that sector that is completely not interested in what you're selling, regardless of their segmentation and cohorting, you're losing out. You're spending so much time and so much money, you're completely losing out. Now, what's interesting is this. You guys have all heard about something that they say, the natural selection. Natural selection is when nature basically naturally works out the weakest links, right? Just natural selections is, I'm not going to go through all the scientific evidence, but you guys know what natural selection is. So I found this to be very interesting, and this is a point I want to make, is in the workplace, in the practical field, when companies need to make decisions on who they're employing, we found now in the modern age that natural selection and the law of diffusion and innovation has never been more relevant, accurate, and actually easier to use. This is what happens. In the academia, in the field here, the people that falls in the bottom half, meaning I'm only there because I need to be, naturally is working themselves out of the working field one day. It's catching up to them. Because this is what happens. Your degree, your piece of paper, your theory, theoretical experience, diplomas, everything that you build up at this stage is 100% valid, 100% needed, and 100% true to get you the interview. So people advertise the jobs out there. You guys in your career is going to have a lot of say of what questions to ask, what to look for. But this is what happens, right? And I see this in a practical point of view. So they put out the job ad, and then they go through the basic requirements. You need to have this degree, you need to have this, you need to have this experience, blah, 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 blah. They go out. After that, if you've met that criteria, the only thing you gained is the interview. Then natural selection happens. Meaning if you have no interest to be there, if you had no interest in all the free knowledge, even paid for, doesn't matter, but the things that the speakers, the university or lecturers comes and tell you, if you had no interest now, it's going to show when off in the interview process. It's going to show up in your workplace. And today we're sitting with one of the most amazing influencers out there, that we're sitting with a wealth of knowledge. The world has never been smarter than ever before. The biggest thing that we're going to talk about is AI and how that influences that and how it shapes that. But the reality is even at the end of today, and that process is just going to be speeded up the whole time, your knowledge as it stands now becomes more irrelevant if you don't push hard from your side to tune into that. So the encouragement of natural selection, what I always say in academia, and the lecturers never like me when I say this, is I say this: if you have no interest on anything today that's going to be said or whatever, you feel that you're sitting here just because you need to be here, I don't take offense if you stand up and leave. Okay, I don't take offense to that. I've never taken offense to that. If you feel that this is going to be boring, I don't want to be here today, maybe I want to go to my friend's house, maybe I want to go on coffee, maybe I want to go on social media, I take zero offense to that. But here's the warning, and this is the end encouragement that I'm going to share with you guys now. What you do now and how you tune into that is going to determine your success for the future, 100%. And in the past, I think they communicated it wrong. People said, you know, university is a space where you gain all this knowledge, and because of that knowledge, you're going to be relevant in the market. I say no. It's a psychological thing. It's the interest of that knowledge, because the university's knowledge and what you gain in this space, that's debatable if that's the best. I mean, we're sitting with AI that if you had a computer brain, it will be more faster and plug in to do that, right? But it's the attitude of saying, I'm going to stand up today and I'm willingly want to partake in this. Now, I said I'm from a economics point of view, so I like it to look at things from a macro and a micro scale. For example, I work, let me actually say this. I think I can say this because I'm not an economist, but I studied economy, so I'm definitely going to not label myself to that. But let me tell you something interesting about me. Here's my truth. I always argue and always fight with economists in conversation, always. I've met, I think, two of the greatest names. I'm not going to mention it but two great minds. That's really, their work is, there's nothing wrong with their work. There's nothing wrong with their work. But it's as the social media say, it's their POV, their point of view, right, that I don't agree with. And let me tell you why. So economists in South Africa will tell you this is how South Africa is doing. And it's not in South Africa, it's worldwide. So economists do a couple of things. What do they look at? They look at macro scale. They look at GDP. They look at the work ratio, meaning how many people are employed. They look at the general schooling system, how many people went into matric, how many people passed matric. They will always say the matric, figures of dropouts and everything, that's the sum. Then they will speak of the general universities, the general education, and the general workplace. That's perfect, that's valid, that's the data they use with. I work with macroeconomics with microeconomics. So for example, take South Africa, for example. I'm from Cape Town. I think personally, South Africa's economic state is measured by what's happening in Joburg. We see that. All the exports, all the money, all the headquarters are in Joburg, and that's how we measured. But if you drive through the Free State, anyone here's got roots in the Free State? Okay, so I'm initially from there, so I look at it. It's completely the opposite of what's happening there. There's the towns, the small towns and microeconomies are completely falling out because The farmers is now at that point where it's going like this. You're either going to become a mega farmer, do really well in agriculture, do it from a business side of view, and the people that did sustained agriculture is completely losing everything that they have because you can't afford to farm anymore. So what's happening is those small towns used to rely on agriculture. Same amount of ground, same amount of everything that's there. As a matter of fact, if you take it, generally speaking, the farmers are making, the mega farmers, way more money than they ever used to make, right? So the smaller economy is getting richer. That's what the economists say. Now that person is buying their cars in Joburg. They are buying all their stuff from the, let's take milk, for example. You used to have a dairy butchery and everything next to each other. That's where you get the milk, the meat, and everything like that at a fraction of the price. Those people are supplying to the corporate chain. You go support the corporate chain. So all of the money that always even shifted in that smaller economy, but it is in the economy of South Africa, right? So interesting about that is this is for me, on an economical point of view, you're going to be in this position now that you see people are talking about your future. And the people that's talking about your future is not talking about you as a person specifically. They're talking about it generally speaking. So generally speaking, they're going to talk about the jobs that's being created. Generally speaking, they're going to talk about the opportunity. Generally speaking, they're going to talk about the entirety of growth and those type of opportunities. But remember, if you think about it, the interview is the personal part. It's a you. The economist doesn't see if you getting the job means, what does it mean if you getting the job? It means that you didn't get the job, right? They don't look at that. And that for me is a problem. That for me is a massive problem, because when we sit here, especially with AI, the global scale of everything is not going to care if it's at a cost of you, as long as the industry is gaining. So psychologically speaking, we really need to start looking at your ability and your value trade past that interview phase. What you bring to the table as a person and not as a statistic. Make sense? You guys with me on that one? So, no, go for it. Did you, there we go, you brought that up on us now. So let's look at a couple of things that's important for me. Just to segment a couple of my examples here today. So according to us, and people classify it differently, but we have been through two economical eras, and we're now in the third one that bordered between two. And I'm going to make that example. So I actually spoke to Ms. Annette before the class shortly about this. So we started off humanity in economical eras, trading eras, as, let's say, on the measurable stuff in the agricultural sector. The agricultural sector came with its own economical rules and values and how everything shifted. And then in the economical sector, people realized and said, okay, but if we build a type of machine that can do 50 people's work, we can make this more profitable and growing it faster and things like that. Logical thinking. So from logical thinking and mechanistic, that's actually the word, mechanistic approaches to this, what happened is this and a couple of other factors. We moved from the agricultural era to the industrial era. The industrial era was as our schooling systems were built on. This is where everything happened in sequence, in mechanistic. Once again, we had a machine, a train, a boat, a car, and because of this engineering and because of this movement and because of this data, this affected on how you got a job, how opportunities are realizing and coming to the market and everything like that. But very interesting is we see it every day, that the industrial era's rules is no longer relevant here. Why? Because we're now in the digital era. Digital era is completely different. We get remote work. We get economies that thrive on something that they don't even have the tangibility of. We're sitting with AI, we're sitting with Bitcoin. If Bitcoin couldn't have been possible in the industrial era, right? But whether it's a scary thing and whether it's a doomsday thing or it's irrelevant. The relevance is in this digital era, what are the things that we need to be mindful of? Where are we moving towards, and how does AI affect where we're going to be one day? So, 3 eras. Agricultural, that's Oma and Opa, even long before that. That's literally when they used donkey carts, right? Now they're taking the donkey cart, they're putting it on wheels, putting it on tracks. They don't need 50 people to carry everything around. They've got one system, and people's jobs shifted. That's what happened, right? That's where supervisors, management, everything was incorporated, was in that era. But that era, in today's business world, we see that the businesses that's building their methods and processes on the industrial eras, those are the businesses that's vulnerable. Overnight, they just, nothing they did wrong, just overnight they closed doors because a young startup from wherever completely played with the new rules and took over the entire value chain, right? We see that. Okay, so we've spoken about the 3 different eras. And I believe, if you ask me, I believe we're in the last era. I don't think there's going to be anything past digital era ever. But I think digital era, we in the beginning of it, even if you think of the industrial era, which was the longest and most effective one, where it started and where it ended, for example, what a train, and yeah, I'm going to use that example now, but where a train started with the whole coal and everything, and where it ended with super fast bullet trains, there was a massive shift of everything. And I don't think in the digital era, I don't think there's going to be an era after this unless you see AI in super intelligence on its own era. But I do believe in the digital era that I trust what the experts are saying, that AI is really moving fast to super intelligence. You guys have heard about the phases of AI. So if you've got AI that can, I think it's called general artificial intelligence. The general artificial intelligence is to say a certain AI can take up a certain task. We all have that, right? And just by that, copywriters don't have a work anymore. But because of that, copywriting in itself became a new work, because now AI needed a prompter to prompt it on how to copyright. So the work just shifted. The tool was there to take over the job, and it just shifted. But now they're talking about super intelligence. So super intelligence is when AI can correct itself and prompt itself faster than what we can. And we see it already happening in a lot of things. We see it, for example, one of my biggest friends and mentors in life, he's a radiologist. He hates it when I tell him what's happening to your job. He took so long to now go and find a position to, to specialize in radiology. It takes very long in the medical industry to find that position and everything. And I told him the other day, I said, the career that you've chosen is completely non-existent anymore. And the reality is it's not yet, but we need to accept it in certain phases and decide what we're going to do with it. Because AI, machine learning, especially in the health tech, dermatology can map your skin with one go. It can find anything faster than the highest specialist doctor can. With radiology, it can see and scan an X-ray, CT scan, everything faster than any human being can, and more accurate. So yes, we're in the position where the professional human being still needs to say, it's wrong here, and still prompt it to be wrong. But if we're at super intelligence phase, it can just correct itself. And I listened to a lecturer the other day that actually said it very well. It said, if you take your iPhone, for example, who's here has got iPhone? Hands up. There we go. I'm not going to spy on your phones, right? But if you take your iPhone, for example, the reason why I'm using iPhone is because we all know how they market. I don't have an iPhone. I've got a MacBook, but I don't have an iPhone. So what happens with the iPhone is, each year, the latest one is going to come out. That's a new thing. The latest one brings out what? Minute changes, right? There's nothing major anymore, but we can argue about if it's major or not, but realistically it's not. But with that, it comes a new operating software, OS. And with that OS, what happens is your old tech, especially 3 models back, becomes irrelevant because you can no longer do updates. It's a brilliant marketing strategy, you can say. The reality is, if you think in those terms, currently we as humans, as a user of an iPhone, take 1 year to learn a new, well, we learn it faster than a year, but to really get comfortable and convenient with this new software, new everything. They say super intelligence, for example, is that annual update on softwares and everything is that period is gonna be shorter. So it's not annually, it's the ability to do monthly, and then weekly, and then daily, and then hourly and minutely. So if they talk, the experts say by 2050, for example, it's a long way out, but it's really still in our lifetime, right? They say you're going to sit here and listen to Dion speak, and by the time you exit here, all the technology, knowledge, and experience on your softwares, everything that you knew is going to be outdated. That's how fast it is. That's with super intelligence. That's the era that we are in now. So here's the question that I want to ask you guys. This is the mind over machine that I want to talk about. The question is, should my long-term vision affect or change my short-term dedication? Meaning, should what I'm working towards whatever, should it be affected on what I'm doing now? So if there's anyone in this room, I want to hear from you. Who here knows what they want to do with their career? Like, what's the goal in film and television? How do you think in 10 years from now, just on the trend line that we are now, how do you think film and television is going to change? Do you think it's going to change? Like the end product, film and television. For example, how old are you? 22. Okay. When I grew up, it's the strangest thing. Sorry, I don't mean to take your shine away. I just want to give you a quick example. When we grew up, there wasn't something like instant television. We had television. I'm not old. Of course, we had television. But when we're saying instant, I couldn't put on the TV and select what I wanted to watch. There were show times allocated, still what we see on certain channels, but allocated, this is how it's going to show, right? So I knew I'm a huge Power Rangers fan. I used to love Power Rangers. And I knew when I Power Rangers would show just before I get back from school, but we had a VCR recorder and I could record it and I can watch it then. That's the closest thing to on demand that we could get. But with all of that, primetime television was very limited. So kids, we always say kids used to play outside and never be in front of the TV. I argue with that. We always were in front of the TV, but just when the show was on, and the show's time and premiere and airing was limited. So it's not that we didn't watch TV, we watched it, but you had 2-3 hours and then it's done. There wasn't anything else to watch. You had zero interest to watch anything else than the show that was on. But the coolest thing ever, and I watch it through my kid, my daughter is 4 years old. So we've got Netflix at home. I want to watch this, brilliant, put it on. So the other day we traveled, we stopped at an Airbnb and they had satellite TV, like normal TV. So I'm on E or M, I can't even remember which channel, and there was a kid show on. And like with any kid show or on satellite TV, there's ads. And I never knew that my kid has no idea what an advertisement is. She said to me, put back the show, put on the show. I was like, no, it's still on. It's just a break. And I realized in that position that even if I try to explain to her what it is, she has no idea what the heck's the words coming out of my mouth. So in that sense, TV changed because people that's advertising through TV, it was, back in the day, there was that advertisement space. Now with YouTube, we see that it is, but they're pushing for the paid content that you don't want to see advertisements. So just marketing through TV, that changed, right? So in your mind, how do you think TV and that medium is going to change where you building your career on towards that goal? Have you thought about that? Yes. Brilliant way of thinking. The scary thing with that is upskilling yourself. That's why I use the example is going to be more difficult and more difficult and more difficult, right? Because AI is beginning to, imagine if AI can prompt AI to create those things. What's the need for a prompter there? Because I've seen the quality of films, it's brilliant. But I also see the flaws out there from a marketing. Like, have you seen the thing that AI is struggling with hands and fingers? They're really struggling with that. So who picks that up? Human picks it up. But now you're prompting AI and say, please look at the fingers. It can't be 6. We as humans are 5. And AI is already improving on just how we prompt it to be. So we've got this long-term vision of what you want to do with your life. And the reality is your short-term dedication is impacted through this. Today, being here, getting this wisdom, what you're going to do with this, how you're going to act upon it, this is the valuable things that's going to shift you into not being part of, unfortunately, it's not natural selection anymore. It's AI selection, right? It's nothing natural about what's happening in this world. It's quite really scary. AI can motivate and can lecture and can teach way better than we can on a logical, mechanistic point of view. There is some good hope, though. So here's the first myth and fact that I want to talk about. The first myth is that AI will take your job as it stands now. But the fact is, a company or a person with AI will. No one always thinks about that. They think, oh, my job is safe because I'm not in radiology, I'm in neuroscience or oncology, dealing with cancer patients or anything else. And my job is safe because AI can't do that or other can't do that yet. But the reality is a doctor or a company that incorporates AI technology in the way how they do things, they will take over your job, 100%. So we can't really avoid that, can we? So yeah, this is what I see in the workplace. Currently, this is for me the most interesting and fascinating thing ever. So currently, this is what's happening. In the workplace, we see that AI completely takes away at a massive rate. And when I'm saying AI, I'm not necessarily meaning I'm meaning the previous example, meaning it's either physical AI or it's the person with AI, or it's the company with AI technology. So it's not necessarily that AI is coming in this computer terminator form and taking away, executing everybody. That's not what I mean. I'm meaning the ability of AI. But what AI is doing is faster than ever. It's taking away the mechanistic, the logical thinker, the data-driven jobs overnight. I'll give you an example. In board meetings, they used to have CFOs, or they still do. CFO is your chief financial officer. Financial officer is data. That's what they do. They work on past data. They work on spreadsheets. They mechanistic. So mechanistic, I want you guys to see data, engineering, logical sense, no psychology, no emotion. It's just A to B, right? With the softwares out there, yes, you might still need a CFO, but do you need an accountant underneath him? 100% no. Do you need data captures when all the invoicing and all the processes are automated? So my company, we developed a program that automates all my admin for me. 0. I walk out here, I take this off. Everything that has been said is recorded. It's ready to stream if we wanted to stream. The notes are there. It runs through a legal processor. Our legal processors tell us, Dion, you mentioned that name, that's a legal vulnerability. So it will check if anything leaks out there. Everything. My exposure is 0 to none. People can still take action to it, but I can pre-plan everything that I want to do. A company can now, as I stand here, request a service from me, get the invoice, get everything, get a personal welcome note from me. We've all seen that. You get that in your promotion, like, hello, name, thank you for your interest in this, take a lot, what. Do you think someone's typing? No one's typing it there. It's completely automated. That technology's been there for a while, but now the entire sequence is completely taken over by AI. So I see it that overnight AI just replaces. But I've seen the following, and it's super interesting. AI replaces mechanistic. It replaces logical. And ironically, the one thing that it's struggling, and I predict that it will be impossible to take over, is ironically the one thing we as human beings were created to be in the first place, is to be relational, is to serve, to be emotional, to be of connection. And if in the event that I miss that point at the end in my conclusion statement, that is my encouragement here today. If you want to hold your golden key, apart from lecturing yourself and upskilling yourself, meaning not lecturing yourself, meaning purposefully wanting to be here, purposefully wanting to engage, the other thing that I want to tell you is your only benefit in life is you being unique, you being relational. And if you think about it, the lonely person, when they grasp any technology out there, it's from a point of loneliness. You go sit in a coffee shop. You go sit in a coffee shop and everyone's on their phone, even me. You on your phones. That's what you do. That's with the technology. You think you're being relational, and you'll notice you still have that missing element. That's still something that you feel that it's voided, that technology can't fill. Purposefully start speaking to each other. Purposefully start connecting. That's why debates are so good. That's why talk is so good. That's why when I said in the beginning, if you don't agree, raise your opinion. Engage with that. Because the only thing that we were made to do is to be creatures of relationship, of servitude. And if we're missing that at the end of the day, you completely, regardless of your dreams, completely replaceable. So it's not a doomsday thing. It's a psychological thing. And I want to say this. Let's do this example. This is the last scary part, I think, that I want to mention. 133 million. Who would like to get that amount of money now? Don't be shy. Don't lie. Get your hands out of your pockets. Huh? What are you going to do with 133 million now? Solve a lot of problems, right? Again, remember the eras that I mentioned. Got agriculture, you've got industrial, you've got digital. Okay. Here's the scary part. Let's say more than 133 actually, because you're younger than me. So I'm 35. I'm not old, but I mean, in retrospect, some people would think, yes, I'll definitely will never hang out with that guy. That conversation's gonna be dead there. But I'm 35 years old. So naturally, if I go on the industrial rule, remember we talk about the rules, how it changes. So here's the truth. In the agricultural age, the one benefit that humanity never had, generally speaking, remember, I'm now going to put on the boots of the macroeconomist. Generally speaking, no one was ever able to retire. It wasn't a privilege back then because you lived hand to mouth. So you grow a crop, whatever, right? We all know the stories. I think regardless of your age, you have an idea how life looked like from an AI point of view, I guess, back in the day. But that was one of the biggest things that the industrial age allowed us to do. It allowed us to barter, meaning change your skill set for money, not only so, and with that money, if you're wise with it or had an opportunity or whatever, you can save up to this privilege called retirement. And for a very short period of time in the industrial, if you think about it, generally speaking, your household might look different, but think just in your greater family and greater friends. But you don't need to think more beyond that. If you think about your parents and your grandparents and maybe what your grandparents told you about their parents, that's the furthest, that's the timeline. But I'm going to speak in my life. So my grandparents were able to retire comfortably. No, I won't say comfortably, but factually. When they hit 65, they retired. It was something called an annuity plan would pay out. Ironically, that whole plan for retirement never included the luxury that goes beyond retirement. So people could retire and they can maybe go to the Kruger every now and then or this, but they can't go on luxury cruises and things like that. Because the ability, first of all, when they started their planning never existed. It was never a thing. It was a thing always for the super wealthy. But that door of travel and that door of all this luxury opened up to everyone, kind of, right? It comes at a cost, but it's accessible to more people than just the super old. But now, what I saw with my parents or that generation is retirement became more difficult, more stressful, kind of more impossible, but still yet achievable because of the era that they were in. Now, the industrial era was this. The industrial era was you go to school, the school teaches you the discipline of an 8 to 5, where all the economical states of bartering, meaning supply versus demand, made sense. Everything made sense. There wasn't something like a non-tangible trade like Bitcoin and like opportunities or subscription programs or things like that. It didn't exist. So everything like that made sense. And you would go to university or army and university collective, depending on a couple of things, meaning you will have a formal education. And from that, you will enter the formal work. But in between, you would marry, and the first thing that you will buy with your salary, it even made banking sense, was a house. So I see it in a lot of my friends, and there's nothing wrong with that, that their future planning is still built on that first principle. That's how their parents did it. That's their education. That's how they do it. There's nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't come from their own natural thought. It comes from just their behavior of how the previous generation did it. But here's the truth. Here's the truth. Regardless if that's your style or not, the truth is this. And people take offense when I say the following. Okay. I'm 35 years old. It's go to ChatGPT to do the calculation. You don't need to do super maths. Currently, depending on what you do with your life, my cash burn rate, meaning the amount of money that I need to survive now, based on my living expenses, currently is 40,000 a month. Okay, I'm not saying that's my earnings. I'm not saying even pro and con. I'm not even saying sometimes I definitely make, but the fact is, it costs me 40,000 Rand to survive. That's the burn rate. Okay, that's what I run through. Whether I have it, whether I've got excess of it is irrelevant now for this example. I want to make it practical. So if I take 40,000 Rand, so pause there. So remember now, if your burn rate in your circumstances, remember I've got a family that I need to look after, is less, then the picture is going to be more beautiful at the end of the day. If it's more, then this is scary. So I warn people when I say, listen here, when you get a salary increase, yes, treat yourself. I also like fancy stuff, but be careful to not adapt your living expenses, because the sum is what I'm going to tell you now is going to look way worse at the end of the day, because this is now calculated at 40 grand a month, right? So at 40,000 Rand a month, if this is your burn rate, I'm 35. And from the industrial era, I want to retire at 65. So we've got two known. We've got a known burn rate now. We've got a known timeline. Remember that burn rate excludes my investments, or if it includes the investments, it's still part of the burn rate. So meaning it will always be a function of the equation. So I've got that 40. I know it's 30 years till retirement. So I've got that known. And the only assumption that I'm going to make is I'm going to say, I'm assuming a 5%, right? A 5% inflation rate annually to the future. So that rate can look better, right? It can look, we've had years that it's 8%, we've got years that they say it's 3%, but realistically, I said 5%, and hopefully if the economy performs better, then it can show, but that's what I said. So that's the only assumption rate. Based on that, I can calculate what my burn rate value would be in 30 years. And then I just calculate if I said when I reach 65 and I live till 90. Okay, that's my age limit that I set to myself. Claiming it. Hope I don't know if I want to hope for longer than that, but let's say now. So that's a healthy living. So 65 till 90, it's going to cost me in that period 133 million Rand to retire. 133 million Rand to retire. Now you've got money in annuities and all of that, and in that space, your annuity always paints this picture and said, on retirement, this is going to be 20 million. And you think, wow, it's amazing. 133 million if my living expenses is equivalent to the same lifestyle as 40. And we know 40 is getting tight, eh? We know some of you might sit here and think, yes, Leon, how are you doing it? And some people might think, wow, that's a lot. But realistically, if you go statistically, that's not. We're privileged, we're thankful for what we have, but that's a fact. So if I want to keep the same living experiences or living style, lifestyle, that's the word, if I want to living style. If I want to keep the same lifestyle when I retire, and when, I mean, we definitely have privileges, but definitely not, I mean, Annette knows that we don't drive fancy luxury cars or live in amazing, massive houses and mansions like that. But the reality is 133 million rand. Now, I sat at one point and I thought to myself, oh my goodness, it stressed me out for a moment when I did that calculation. It's like, what am I doing? What am I busy with? But here's the reality, and that's why I said it. Number one, because we start living to the truth of the possibility, psychologically speaking, we can have one or two things. Number one, we can actually work intentionally towards that not happening, and the ability of retirement still stays true. That's the first thing that we can do. The second thing that we can do, and we see this more, is if you work on the same principle, ironically, as in the agricultural sector, with the knowledge that retirement is impossible, would you not do something now about the career and the way you work to make work fun and purpose-driven, and feeling that you delivering to society, and feeling that you're doing ethical business and enjoying what you're doing? For example, me, I love what I'm doing. I've got zero stress in my work, nothing. Just because the things that I cannot manage, I completely leave that in God's control and completely out of my hands. But psychologically is what helped me, not the data, not the mechanistic stuff, not the logical stuff, not the stuff that AI is taking away. So why stress about those stuff? Our approach needs to be slightly different to it. I mean, it is sad if you think about that you didn't do that equation and your career planning is built on something that is vulnerable to AI. We do have a moment where we need to breathe and think, oh my goodness. But it's not a doomsday thing. It's not what I'm saying here. The one thing that I love most about AI is it gives us the knowledge that we have now. It gives us an ability to reset. Think about it. The person that's now 50, let's say our parents, like 40, 50s, right? They're at a very vulnerable stage with new technology because they're living in a digital era where everything that they learned from a skill set and knowledge point of view came from the industrial era. And we already said in the beginning, the rules per economical era is irrelevant in the other one. There might be some principles, but it's irrelevant. It comes with new rules. So our parents really have it difficult because their way of doing business, they don't understand. Like, think about it. Technology, AI, things like this in your mind just makes sense like that. For them, it's sometimes, you know, if you've got younger parents, it's easier. But let's say you're at the mark of mid-40s to 50s, they have it really difficult. And now they've got it difficult to switch. They're so close to their retirement. They're so expansive in their careers and how they build their careers that it's difficult. I see that in the workplace. Those are the age gaps that it's difficult. They go to work, they do their business ethically and everything, but they're in such a corner with how competition is situated, but not because of they doing anything wrong, just because they're not doing anything relevant. So the scary thing is the beautiful thing for us. We have an excuse not to chase a certain avenue down, and that excuse is say, but AI is going to close that. We've got the opportunity to say, okay, but if that avenue is in a previous dream or whatever, let's keep open the avenues that AI is not chasing, the relationships, the servitudes, meaning when I say servitude, I always tell my clients, it's one thing to sell something, right? Especially in the medical industry, they've got it so easy. I went to the World Health Expo the other day. I walked in, and now these are, it's at the CTICC in Cape Town. I don't know if you've ever been. So it's a massive floor, exposition floor. So I'm standing there, I'm walking through. Now, all of the biggest reps in the medical industry are there worldwide, like China and India, and believe it or not, those are the two innovators with medical equipment, but very cool things, right? I walk in there, not one rep tried to sell me anything, nothing. And for me being in sales, I was like, you guys are very arrogant because you're so used to the world needing your product that you don't even need to chase or build relationships anymore. And the thing is that corporates will always be in that position where they make good money just because they've got a position in the market where everyone needs to buy them. But if I need to now start a new hospital chain, and that's happening, not the me's, but new people are just saying, we want to start a group that's more people-centric or whatever. Those are the last companies that you will go to because they're not relationally driven. So that's my light that I want to say. When we talk about mind over machine, it's the placement that you get to offer in your workplace, in your space, in your educational field to what you can bring to the customers and to the peers and people around you. Because if you're not interested about communicating, making friends, relationally connecting, talking, contributing to society with your specificness, you are irrelevant. Sorry to say. Completely irrelevant. So here's the psychology. It's really becoming, we've closed the avenue. Can we agree? We've closed the avenue. Mechanistic and logistical is not the avenue to push, right? Or even if you push, it's an avenue that's very vulnerable to where AI is taking us. But I believe, and this is so relevant to what you guys are doing, I believe the biggest upper hand that we have in society is the psychological approach. The psychological approach is still so far unknown, believe it or not, because it doesn't make logical sense. But because it doesn't make logical sense, it's more affordable, first of all, for corporates to encounter and explore this option. And second of all, it's more effective. Now, surely I would need to give way more examples than that. So I'm going to give you guys a couple of things. So this is my belief. My belief, first of all, is that AI is going to take, or is busy taking over, the logistical side of things, the mechanistic side of things. It's untouched on the psychology side of things. So I believe if we really want to make ourselves relevant, we should push into psychological thinking. So this is psychological thinking. The beauty of it, there's no rules. So who of you have ever seen in a working place or in any setup, you'll see the spreadsheet guy and you see the crazy person. The crazy person is the dreamer, the loves marketing, loves social media, loves editing, loves, their mind is just, they're struggling to communicate what's going on their mind, right? Interesting fact, we struggle to do that because in our mind where the communication part is and where the emotional state is, there's two different sides of the brain. That's why it's why we struggle to communicate emotions. You can tell someone, I love you, but you can show it, but you struggle to communicate that. It's a very real thing. But in any case, so in the boardrooms, I need to give credit here to Rory Sutherland. He's one of those amazing minds from Ogilvy in the UK. And he speaks about it a lot. He says in the boardrooms, I said as well, what happens is the mechanistic thinkers, the financial guys, the spreadsheet guys, whenever they need to decide something or have a course of action, they never need to get permission from the psychological guys, the marketers, the dreamers, the creative people, never to get permission. Whenever the psychological thinkers need to run with an idea, they always need to get approval from the mechanistic side, right? The board of executives always need to approve before you run with this. But the creative team never needs to approve a new strategy or new HR process or new whatever. So we're living in this ironic state. So I'm going to tell you a couple of minor stories that I think you can relate to. Any one of you ever went strawberry picking? Who's here been to Cape Town, to Stellenbosch before? Not? Come, bucket list, travel. Okay, so when you drive there, you can actually sit on the way to White River. They've got the blueberry picking now. Okay, so where it started was, it was never a thing to do it on a farm that exports or retails their products. It was never a thing. So what happened is the following is, at one point there was a disruption in the global chain of exports with strawberries. Okay, so either a war somewhere, so we sat with a lot of influx of strawberries in our country, and so did other countries as well. So what happened was the following. They said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to take this product and just in the market going to charge way less for it, like massive discounts to get people to buy it. But here's a beautiful thing about psychology is the human mind, when we see two products next to each other in the retail and one is cheaper, you naturally don't think what a bargain. Your first question is, what's wrong with that one? And sales dropped. They couldn't sell it. And then the psychological thinker said, okay, let's try something slightly different. What we're going to try is the following. We're going to say, instead of, and sorry, in the same sense, what other options do you have? Charge the same, still won't sell, you buy the other one. Charge more, why would you charge more for a product that was longer on the fields, is a bit more rotten, there's no option out of this. The psychological thinker said, wait a minute, let's allow the public to come and do an experience with the strawberries, come and pick their own. So what happened is, they first of all said, okay, now we can save on labor because we don't need to pick it. We can save on packaging, we don't need to pack it. We can save on cold room and transportation costs because we don't need to store it nor take it to the retail spaces. We don't need to do anything about that. And we as human beings are stupid enough to pay more for that experience. You pay more per gram to go and pick your own strawberries. And that's psychological thinking. The mechanistic approach didn't make sense. The psychological thinker made sense. I mean, if you were to tell anyone, pause that physical example now, if I needed to tell you, listen here, please come to the Sasko factory and come bake your own bread, use our premises, but you're going to pay for the electricity, the ovens, everything. You think, what the earth are you talking about? Doesn't make sense to do business like that. And that was the same with that starting point. No one has done it. So why would you pay to go do their labor for them and buy the product at a more expensive rate than you would have? Doesn't make sense, but it worked. And psychology or psychological thinking is a crazy idea that in practice works. It doesn't need to make sense. But if you thought about something just from a non-mechanistic point of view, it puts you in a position to try something else. Let me give you another example. Uber. Who here has booked an Uber before? Hands up. Who here doesn't know what Uber is? Just in any case. Okay, but we all know what Uber is. So let's run through the Uber experience. You book an Uber, what happens? When you say, pick me up here, take me there, what happens? You see, sorry? Did you know that was never a function? No. So exactly what you see now, the client experience, the client journey, that servitude that I was talking about. Because if I'm not clear, the purpose is to say, listen here, we need to be more relational, more connecting, and mechanistic logical thinking won't allow for that. It's the psychology that allows for that space, right? So that's what we're getting to. Sorry, sometimes my talking and my thinking is two different worlds. So this is what happened. People, when Uber started, realized that people stopped booking Uber, not because of an experience, but because the lack of not knowing where your driver is created so much stress. So people will, especially in the UK, this is the weather in the UK the whole time. They would sit there, they will book an Uber. Now they need to wait outside in the cold. Psychologically, don't want to run up because what if I miss my Uber? And the stress that it caused people for not knowing made people to completely not use Uber anymore. So, and this is the story from their founder. Their founder said they went to the boardroom and said, guys, how are we going to counter this churn rates? Sorry, I've got till 11, right? Yeah. I won't get you late. Calm down. You need to run, go. So this people said, okay, what are we going to do? And Uber said, the mechanistic guys stood up and they said, what we're going to do is we're going to employ more Uber drivers. And we're going to put them in the biggest hotspots where people book Uber. So we've got that statistics. Statistically speaking, those are the places. So we're just going to put more Uber drivers there. So in due course, what people would do is they would realize that if you miss your Uber, the next one is just, there. And then then the founder, they pitched everything. He went back home the night And over the weekend, he watched one of the old James Bond movies. I can't remember which one, and I don't even recall seeing it. But as he explains, it was the old movies where James Bond had this tracker in his car, and Q, which is kind of like his boss in the headquarters, could see everywhere James Bond is driving. And he decided, he said, no, guys, what we're going to do is we're not going to employ more people or go expenses. The only thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a map so that people can see where their Uber driver is. So think about it logically. They didn't create more Ubers. They didn't make the trip faster. They didn't added more value. They did nothing. The only thing that they did is took away the not knowing part. That's all they did. And guess what? It worked. People can now book an Uber and say, I've got 10 more minutes to drink a beer. I don't need to wait outside. And that's the power of alchemy. That's the power of psychological thinking. The other one is got 3 more here that I quickly want to mention. The other one is one of my biggest things that I believe, this is me saying this, and if you know anyone in the chains, gladly help out. Checkers, Woolworths, and Spar in South Africa. Checkers, I believe, by accident. I don't know if it was on purpose. They say it's on purpose. I think it's by accident. Managed to crack the marketing code of skipping a generation. Let me give you an example. With everything that they're doing, my kid is 4 years old. She knows what Checkers is. 100%. So this means Checkers scored 2 generations later on the cost of today. Do you know how much money they saved? They don't need to convince or lecture my kid one day to use Checkers. My kids know who Checkers is. Spar needs to chase all of what they're doing. My kids have no idea who Spar is, because the only thing that they're chasing is the copy and paste model. Oh, this is working for Checkers. Let's do this. This is working for them. So they going through all the logical sense. From my point of view, I can clearly see they've got no psychological thinker in their board meetings, nothing. They're data driven. And although data is valid, what do we know about data? Data is historic. So that's why we use the term it's outdated, right? It's historic. So data in my business, what we do is we use data to see past trends. So we use the mechanistic side still. It's not irrelevant. We want to see what happened. But then we use psychology to decide a future forward, because it's more effective, it's cheaper, and everything like that. Let's not go too much into those 3, because I think then we at the point where we can be scandalous. And by the way, I really want all of them to succeed. So tell the Spars they can really call me. I've got a couple of solutions. But then the last 2 stories that I want to mention on that is the Eurostar. So the Eurostar is the train in London, which takes the people from London to Paris. Okay, so cross-continent, that's the train. People start complaining about the journey takes too long. Okay, the journey is just too long. They went ahead and it cost them 30 billion pounds. 30 billion pounds. That's 600, that's more than the 750 billion rand. Okay, to do a 1.5% improvement in time. So when we say about, when I used the example earlier, this is exactly the example that I will use that says mechanical problem or mechanical solutions, logical solutions are getting more expensive and it's getting minute results. Psychological, because there's not a lot of implementation processes, is psychological. It's way cheaper and also more effective. And this is a pivotal point of example. When we said in the industrial era, when trains started out, and I told you I only wanted to make a train 10 times faster, it cost engineering and infrastructure, but it was possible. We got that. But if I tell you today, we see that everywhere, I want to make my plane 10 times faster. It's impossible. We're just so far advanced. It's possible to make it faster, but it's going to cost you so much money. It's not. So we saw this with the train. Now, one of the people on psychological warfare, he said the following, and it's so true. So think about it. People complain because we're in an era of instant gratification. We want things now. We want things faster. We want to, what. And we're so eager to please them on that experience. Let's build a faster process chain. Let's build a faster burger counter and a faster this, faster this, faster this. But it's costing so much more. And even if we score time, we're talking about milliseconds or seconds or minutes at most. Now, the argument is this. For 1% of that money, they could have put free Wi-Fi on the train. The train doesn't have free Wi-Fi, by the way. And people would have had something to entertain them with on the journey. They would have really not saved time on the train, but they would have had something to occupy the time on, and it would be 1% of the cost. For 10% of the cost, think about this. This is also one of Rory's examples. He says, for 10% of the cost, they could employ the top models, male and female, in Europe to give out free charcuteries and champagne on the train, and people would actually want the train to slow down, not speed up. That's psychological thinking. When you're in a corner, mind over machine, machine will always be more effective on the logistical side of things. But with human psychology, we get to solve problems faster, sooner, and at a fraction of the cost. So when you're in that position to look, or not when, you should be in that position to always look for solutions on a cycle. You don't need to be the billionaire to solve the problems. You don't need to be that. Another psychological story that I really wanted to tell, I heard it actually over the weekend. It was so amazing for me. This is now for the men. It's going to be a bit one of those stories, I guess, that you want to choose a crowd when you say this. So NASA, when they developed the spacesuit, what the engineers said, it was back in the I guess the 70s, 80s, before, it was a while ago, before females were allowed to even go to space. It was men. Now the engineers are designing these suits. And the engineers came to the part and said, okay, well, you need to pee in your suit. And it's a bit of a problem if there's a leak. There cannot be a leak in a suit because then it's fluids everywhere, right? So what they did is the engineers said, well, we're not going to measure the package of the astronauts. That's just weird. So what we're going to do is we're going to take condoms, send it home with them and say to them, you just tell me what size. That's all. Just tell me what size. So all the men, large, 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 large. That's what they fill out on the form. They get to space. The engineers sit there. They interview people. I laughed so much when it's a true story. They interview these people. And in the interviews in space, they just see fluids in the suits. And the engineers sit there like, okay, the obvious reason is all the men lied about their sizes. But now it's a pride thing. The engineers were like, how do we tell them, please don't lie about this? Because if we say, please don't lie about this, they're just going to say, well, I'm an astronaut, please don't, condemn me, whatever. You don't speak to me that way. It's a real sensitive thing. It was a sensitive thing. So they sat with that problem of how do we fix this area? Because the astronauts are just saying, no, but it's your suit design. It's nothing to do with me. They're not acknowledging that fact. So someone, a lady, said, you know what? Men has got pride. What you do is you just change the naming of your condom sizes. So don't give them a small, medium, large. Give them a large, extra large, and ginormous. So the men actually went. They wanted to know, am I ginormous? Am I extra large? What? They took their sizes and all of the sizing issues was fine. So instead of going all the engineering route, paying all, because can you imagine designing a spacesuit, even that small engineering, how much money and time and effort it costs, just from a psychological warfare, they got the solution very, very fast when it came to that. I thought it was a brilliant story when it came to that. When I start we started experiencing psychological approaches with our clients. And I went up for a meeting in Joburg. I'm from Cape Town, so it's a 2-hour flight. And on the way to the airport, I said, well, I need to test this in my own business on a certain thing. So we have something in our funnel that most company does. It's called low-hanging fruit. So low-hanging fruits, just for those that doesn't know, is basically these are people that really shows interest in your service or products. They're there, but you're struggling to close them. They're not biting yet or whatever. So what we did is I challenged myself and I said, well, we've always wanted to barter on the mechanistic side on how to close a deal and how to build relationships and everything like that. And I took this and I said to myself, I want to challenge myself. And in one of my webinars, I explained the entirety of the service. Unfortunately, there's no time for that today. So I'm just going to give you the conclusion. So on the way to the airport, I said to myself, okay, I want to think now how we can psychologically do all of this. So brainstorm, thought. On the airport, laptop out, started working on a couple of proposals, sent that out. I was actually meeting Miss Annette's husband it was one of their meetings in Johannesburg. Met them, went for the company breakfast, and on the way back to the airport, I sent out the proposals, all of them. Got back home the same day. It was just a day trip, so morning out, evening back, got back home. The next morning when I opened up my laptop, I closed every one of my low-hanging fruits, every single one of them. Just because the offer was on a solutional hearing, solutional listening, bartering, meaning I hear you, I acknowledge this, and data aside, we've got the data, we've got the issue on what we can do, but psychologically, this is what we can offer. And it was a massive success story on that. And I guess the last point that I want to make, let's quickly see on my notes. Yeah, I think the last point that well, not the last, but to bring it all together is, first of all, your success in your career, where you're moving towards, it's really going to start shaping on your attitude and interest where you are today. And if you don't show that, and if you don't have that, and if you don't have that purpose, the one thing that AI shows us in this whole digital stage is, it's a sad thing, but globally we're giving over the pivot of self-entitlement. Life owes me anything. I can strike. I can do that. We see, from me personally, I see a huge vulnerability. For example, the University of Cape Town, all of that, because we're so short-sighted on fighting for our human rights, fighting for, we believe that we forget that in the entirety of the global operation, that entitlement is not going to gain me anything, especially not in the digital era. That's really just going to short down, right? There's still gaps for that. There's still, obviously, I love freedom of speech and so that movement, but we really need to find interest in upskilling ourselves. The one thing that I've noticed, and I've spoken to so many people, is if the reality of not being able to retire is actually so factual, before you take on passive opportunities. So a lot of entrepreneurs out there will speak of active income and passive income, or active business and passive. So that's a typical thing of having side hustles. That's the better word to say that. Before you're too worried about side hustles, worry about scaling your active first. Meaning you need to be the most relevant in your position and the most skilled in your position to be the most relevant at the end of the day. So really read, listen to podcasts, listen to lectures, self-skill yourself so much, because the world will not do it. They'll offer the knowledge out there. I think knowledge has never been more accessible nor cheaper. We've got brilliant YouTubes, we've got brilliant things, but you're still going to be the filter. So I really want to encourage you that I see it in the workplace. The person that doesn't upskill, the person that is a liability for their self-gain and they never get the opportunity to prove themselves on their skill set. They don't. So the importance is the degree, everything that you work for now, the theology, what you do here, that importance is there to get you the interview. Beyond that, it's going to be your own ability, your own skill set, and that gets influenced by what you're doing today. Point that I didn't quite mention, but what I can see in my own life, that I want to amplify the importance of relational connection, right? Yeah, I've got 5 more, or let's say 5 more minutes. So side point, this is not what I wanted to prep today. I think it's Daniel Priestley that invented the strategy of name same, aim, fame, gain. Okay, I'll send the word name same, fame, aim, gain. Yes. So he talks about it, and I use it a lot. You're gonna get in life through being relational, communicating to people, so many networking opportunities. People sell networking opportunities. That's how rare of a commodity networking engagement is. I tell you, at this age, it's the one thing that you can get as free as you can. What I do, I never followed that naming convention, but psychologically, I think I always did it that way. So I've got something that when I meet new people, I'm horrible with names, horrible. Every single person that I know that I'm connected with relationally, or yeah, I'll say relationally, all my friends, colleagues, everyone, every single person I know has a nickname. Every, every single person, whether it's my friends' kids, whether it's my wife, whether it's my own kids, I've got a nickname for. I promise you, I'm not exaggerating. We can go through my Facebook. You can test me. You can go through my phone list. You can say that person. I'll say that's the nickname. Every single person's got a nickname. Okay. I don't remember names, but I remember nicknames. It's a weird thing. But this is what I do. So whenever I meet someone, I listen to their story, meaning what's their skill set, where they're in their life, what they're going to do. We wrongfully, what we do is if you are not to any benefit of what I need now, I tend to forget who you are. But 5, 10, 15 years along the line, I need someone in that field. And the easiest way would be to connect to that person. Even if it's not them, they'll connect me in the right way. So I want to encourage you, when you speak to people, when you meet new people, you can use this strategy of the name, same, aim, game, and fame. So it works as follows. Name, who are you? Who are them? What is your nompi? That's what it is, right? Same, what do we have in common? So in this setting, it will just be something like we both study the same thing or the same field, or it's what we are the same. Because when you meet new people, they also need to remember who you are. And people remember similarity first before anything else. Then it is the fame. What makes you famous in what you do? And what makes them famous in what they do? What are they known to? Then it's the the gain. What is your short-term strategy, short-term vision? What are you working towards? And then it is the gain in this, or the game in the sense of what are you working towards? If you meet people and you psychologically make that connection with them and make yourself known in that position, your career moving forward is going to be so much valuable because you already will have an extended network of people that you can rely on and trust on. Okay. It's a complete side note that I just felt that I want to mention to encourage you to be more active in communicating and be more active in listening to what others are saying. Yeah, I think from that point of view, you guys we've got a podcast network that I don't need to advertise because we gain nothing from it. It's completely free, but where we give out resources to young entrepreneurs that's starting out on what we see in the corporate world, and we simplify it just in a vocal point of view on things that you can think about or score on. And we also have an extended network of people that helps out in the career field and entrepreneurial field that you can reach out to us and say, listen, yeah, what should my next move be? Is there someone I can speak to? Is there a connection point of view and anything like that? But I want to encourage you guys, be more active in purposefully upskilling yourself. Don't take anything for granted. In the bigger spectrum of who we are, life owes you nothing. But it's so fun out there. We've never had more opportunities in the world than we've ever had. I don't like to tell people if you can dream it, you can do it. I don't like telling people you can do anything you put your mind to. I mean, I can't play the piano. I'm certain I can learn, but I can definitely not be a neuroscientist or anything. So just because I dream it doesn't mean it's achievable. But in your interest, in what you want to achieve, it doesn't need to make sense yet. But if you are willing and psychologically able to just take on every obstacle, you can achieve what you want to do in that spectrum, or at least the opportunity will be there for that. But it's going to be in your own actions, whether it's irrelevant, whether you outdate yourself. And yeah, I think that's the mind over machine attitude that I wanted to speak about today. Questions?